Let's go now to my interview with the co-founder of Code Pink, the always amazing Medea Benjamin. Medea, thanks for coming back on.
Good to be with you, Lee.
Good to see you again in these simple matters of war and peace. I wanted to start off with Saudi Arabia. You've done incredible work exposing kind of the partnership between our government and their government to create, for lack of a better term, death and destruction around the world. Your organization, Code Pink, is having a vigil today. Is that right?
We are commemorating 1 year since the Saudi bombing of a school bus. You know, these kids were going out on a summer outing. They were all excited, and all of a sudden there was a Raytheon bomb that just blew up the whole bus.
In Yemen, they were.
In Yemen,
yeah.
in Yemen. And 40 children were killed, incinerated, dozens more wounded. And this was nothing that would change the U.S. support for the Saudi-led bombing, according to Donald Trump. And so it's a year from that time. We're going to be in the Senate atrium doing a memorial for the children who were killed, and then going around to some of the worst members of Senate. That's kind of easy to do. You know?
Pretty much
Not a hard
most of them,
selection. Yeah. To ask them why they continue to support Saudi Arabia in its horrendous war in Yemen.
Where do things stand with Yemen? Because it seems like, I mean, not seems like, it has been years that we've been talking about the horrors that are going on there, the endless bombing, the famine. Where do things stand with Yemen?
Well, this was one of the examples, like, remember when George Bush invaded Iraq and said, oh, this is going to be done in a couple of weeks,
right.
A couple of months at the most. The wonderful king, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the bone saw murderer, he thought, well, same kind of thing, Yemen, let's get involved. This was March of 2015, and thought it would be over in a couple of weeks because Saudis by far have more massive power with all the U.S. weapons that they get. And this has been going on until now, and things have only gotten worse. In fact, now it's just insane. The Saudi coalition included the Emirates. So you have, and now that's split up. The Saudi forces on the ground are now fighting the Emirate forces on the ground, which is a secessionist force in the southern part of the country. And then you have the Houthis, who are more aligned with Iran, that are fighting with the Saudi coalition. And then you got Al-Qaeda and ISIS over here. So it's just an absolute disaster. And of course, the ones to suffer are the civilians. And the entire country has become a zone where the infrastructure is not working, where the health care system doesn't work. Just in 2017, there was the worst outbreak of cholera. There's constant outbreaks of terrible diseases. And every 10 minutes, a child is dying from the effects of the war, which is both the bombings as well as the malnutrition that comes with devastating the water system, not having enough food available. So it is a total mess, and the U.S. continues to play a strong role, despite the fact that Congress, both houses of Congress, miracle of miracles,
right.
Has said we want to stop the support for the Saudi war in Yemen.
Yeah, that was the first anti-war vote maybe since the 60s or something.
Imagine the first time since Vietnam that the War Powers Act was invoked and is actually passed. And so it meant that there were enough Republicans who sided with the Democrats to say, wait, we don't want to keep doing this. It went to Donald Trump's desk, and he vetoed it. Another measure went to his desk, and he vetoed it. The 3 times that he's used the veto, 2 of them have been to continue to support this Saudi war in Yemen.
Because he's very proud of the weapons we sell to Saudi Arabia, and you mentioned Raytheon earlier. A lot of this comes down to profit, so much money to be made in this. You have an effort with Code Pink to boycott these things, right?
We think it's so important that we start looking at how do we sever the ties with Saudi Arabia. And when you start looking into it, you realize all these ties. There's ties from the massive Saudi investments in the U.S. economy. I mean, you want to go with Uber. Uber has about $2 billion of Saudi money. You say, oh, well, maybe I should use Lyft instead. Oh, Lyft actually has about $1 billion of Saudi money. You look around and there's Saudi money all over the place.
Right.
And then here in Washington, D.C., the think tanks that take the money, the PR firms that represent the Saudis, the Ivy League universities that have millions of dollars of Saudi money, the talent firms in Los Angeles are now getting Saudi money, and they are pushing U.S. entertainers to start going to Saudi Arabia because the Crown Prince wants to show how reformed he is, and so he's opening up to have, how wonderful movie theaters in Saudi Arabia and entertainers coming. So our campaign is to focus on all of those elements and look how can we get the entertainers not to go. And we had a great success recently with Nicki Minaj.
Right, right.
And I don't know if your viewers have seen Nicki Minaj perform, but it's hard to think how she would have performed in Saudi Arabia. You know, she's kind of like a lot of flesh.
It's kind of out there, yeah.
Kind of out there, and the words are out there as well. So she's canceled, saying that she was concerned about the treatment of women and the treatment of the gay community and freedom of expression. So that's great. There's a bunch of other entertainers now. We're trying to stop them from going. And then there are the PR firms. We've managed to get 5 of them to cancel their contracts with the Saudis. There's a lot more out there, but that's a good start. There's a couple of universities that have said they're not going to take Saudi money, so we're going to keep focusing on other ones. There's 2 think tanks in D.C. that have stopped taking money, but a lot more continue to take. So all of these ways. There's also companies that have stores in Saudi Arabia. For example, Lush Cosmetics. I don't know if you've ever been in a Lush store.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Familiar.
So it's kind of those nice smelling soaps and things like that. And they're a super progressive company. They are so progressive that they're pro-Palestine. They are pro-environment, the animal rights, all kinds of things. And they actually give money to really great groups that are doing work on these issues. So we found out that they have a couple of stores in Saudi Arabia, and we thought, oh, well, this would be easy. We'll talk to them. And we found out the company is quite divided. Some think we should have never gone in there. Others think, oh, we're helping, you know, we're hiring women. So anyway, we are having a very good campaign of going in front of the Lush stores, giving out educational materials. We've had a couple of conversations with the people who make decisions in Lush about these issues.
I have my next plan is to try and get performers to stop performing in the U.S. till we stop bombing. That's going to be where I work next.
That's
no more U.S.
one.
performances. I want to move on to Iran. You know, the administration now has a goal to economically destroy Iran. And, you know, of course, it's going to go after their medicine and their food and necessities. You guys with Code Pink have been doing teach-ins. Can you talk about that?
Yes, we've taken trips to Iran, and we have 2 more coming up in September and October. We think it's very important to go there and see for yourself. And people are just blown away by how incredibly nice the Iranian people are. And now we're doing teach-ins. So the idea of those teach-ins is saying, who wants to go to war with Iran? Because, you know, everybody says they don't want to go to war, even Donald Trump says, but some people do, you know. And it's not just John Bolton. So we're kind of digging underneath that to look at the, quote, think tanks. We shouldn't even call them think tanks. They're stink tanks. Maybe we should call them stink tanks. Foundation for the Defense of Democracy, Freedom Watch, the lobby group AIPAC.
Or thoughtless tanks.
Thoughtless tanks. Which branches of government, like the Office of Foreign Assets Control in the Treasury, that's implementing all of these horrible sanctions. So we're going down the list of all these different groups that are pushing us towards war and doing teach-ins in their lobby if we can get in their lobby. We just went to the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. We couldn't go up. We got kicked out of their lobby, and so we went out around the side of the building and said, oh, it's lunchtime, so let's sit and have something to eat. It was in Obam Pond. The police came to kick us out of there. So we couldn't even be, we were kicked out of Obam Pond. You can't even eat in the building if you've tried to tell the truth about one of the tenants. So our next one will be at AIPAC, and I don't think they'll be very nice to us either.
So speaking of, I'm glad you brought up AIPAC. What is the connection between our policy right now with Iran, the foreign policy there, and Israel?
Well, Israel and Saudi Arabia have wanted the U.S. to go to war with Iran and do their bidding for them because they both hate Iran for different reasons. And AIPAC didn't want to get into the Iran nuclear deal, has been pushing, as Netanyahu has been pushing, for the U.S. to implement harder and harder and harder sanctions. And they would certainly like to see U.S. military go in and just do some bombing in Iran.
Just to destabilize and destroy the region. And,
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, AIPAC, of course, has been very busy in our Congress of trying to continue to solidify the support for Israel. Mm-hmm. And it does that by making sure that our tax dollars, over $3 billion of them, will continue to go to an already wealthy country to buy more of our weapons. And it also does that by making sure that every new member of Congress takes a trip to Israel on AIPAC's dime.
All expenses paid. Yeah, because our media, our corporate media loves to talk about foreign influence in our elections, but the biggest foreign influence in our elections and our government by far is Israel and AIPAC, right?
That's absolutely right. And if you're a new person in Congress, you are strong-armed until you agree to take a trip to Israel. And I said it was on AIPAC's dime. It is AIPAC's dime, but they pretend it isn't. They created this fake educational group, the American Israel Education Fund, and they organized the trips through this other group to make it, quote, legal. So we are filing an ethics complaint because we think it's totally illegal. I mean, it's so phony that they don't even have paid staff on this fake education group. You know who pays the staff? You want to take 3 guesses?
AIPAC?
AIPAC, yes. AIPAC pays the staff. The boards are overlapping everything. It is AIPAC, just with another name on it.
Well, you got to respect some good money laundering, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to move to Venezuela real quick. Just recently, the Trump administration amped up the embargo on Venezuela, making it like a full embargo, trying to shut off all food and medicine there. But that's nothing to scoff at, right? That's deadly, isn't it?
Well, it was already deadly, as we saw from reports that were put out by the Center for Economic Policy Research, showing that over 40,000 people had died as a result of these sanctions, even before these new, more draconian sanctions were implemented. So yes, this is going to mean a lot more people in Venezuela will die. And it's this horrible self-fulfilling prophecy because they want to say, look how miserable it is in Venezuela, look how many people are leaving, look how hard it is for them to get the things they need to survive, and then the U.S. is choking them off. So it is awful. It is very similar to what the U.S. is doing in Iran. Right. It is actually, Cuba is even more draconian because it's been in place since 1962. And I think it's important to look at the Cuba example because you say, has it changed Cuba's policies since 1962? Right. No. So obviously, these sanctions don't work. They only make the life of the citizens of these countries more miserable. But it doesn't mean that they are a way to change the government. In fact, when people have to spend so much of their time figuring out how they're going to survive, they don't even have time to be trying to overthrow their government. So it's really counterproductive. But certainly, the people in this Trump administration have no concern over the well-being of the people of Venezuela.
You're one of the most active peace protesters, peace activists in this country. You've been doing it for many years now. We've talked about some of your successes. Obviously, in the peace activism game, there are few successes compared to losses going up against the largest, military-industrial complex in the world. What do you tell to activists? How do you kind of keep going at it day after day when it can seem so daunting?
Well, there's ups and downs all the time. I mean, you see the incredible grassroots uprising in Puerto Rico and how successful that has been of getting rid of a governor. You see the uprising in Sudan that just happened, incredible example of people power. And so, there are places around the world and ups and downs that happen, but you see the swelling and the rising up of people. I wish we would see it more here. I mean, I think it's exciting that we have some really good candidates States running for president, but it would be nice if we had, a little more of that oomph of getting out there and demanding changes in our government. But we have made changes over our history in the course of our moving from a less democratic to more democratic society, and we're still far from a really democratic one. But I think we have elements in our history to show us the way forward. And I just think we have to keep getting out there and doing things and trying things differently. It's not always the same thing of, getting as many people into the streets as you can. It's more creative kind of protests like the environmentalists are doing right now. The Extinction Rebellion, I think, is really exciting. We always have to be creative, but I think, we do, as a global community, make change happen, and we just have to keep doing it.
Well, you're truly an inspiration, so thank you for all your work. CodePink.org is where people can find out more, correct?
CodePink.org. Please sign up. Join us in some of these actions.
Thanks again.
Thank you.